My next stop was the Queen's University of Belfast. And when I had an interview with my professor, it was quite remarkable, really, because he sat me down in a chair and he was pacing the room, expressing his frustration that students were coming to university and using universities as cram shops, as just an extension of school, as a place just to find a career. He said university is a place where we should come for self-development, where we develop philosophies and come up with new theories and expand knowledge rather than just, cramming and regurgitating what's already known. I left that meeting absolutely galvanized. To this day, I take my hat off to Professor Gareth Owen of Queen's University Belfast, an amazing man, because he set me on track for the rest of my life. I decided then and there I wasn't going to pursue a career. I never went to a career officer or career, advisory interview. I decided to devote myself to developing the Vortex Theory. And I began to work with this idea of the subatomic vortex. You see, I was in Belfast. Belfast was the birthplace of Lord Kelvin, of the 19th century physicist who really promoted the vortex atom theory. But that theory didn't work because it was applied to the atom and not to the subatomic particle. But when I started working with the subatomic particle, I found it really worked. The theory could really explain things in physics and explain all the problems that were, that the vortex atom theory couldn't explain. So I decided one day to take this burgeoning theory of mine to one of the physics teachers and put it to him and see what he thought about it. Well, he was quite impressed with the fact that I was doing this original work, but he said there's a real problem with the vortex theory, and that is a subatomic particle is a perfect sphere with no poles. It's got no measurable axis of spin. Well, I was crestfallen. I couldn't imagine how you could have a vortex without an axis of spin. If you think about it, you get the whirlpool in your bath as the water's going down the plug hole. You can actually look down the axis of spin. Or if you think of a hurricane, it's an enormous weather system spinning around the eye of the hurricane, which is the axis of spin. So I let go of the vortex theory and headed for home for Christmas. But with my brothers, I was billeted in a caravan with a man called Harry. Harry was a bachelor and he knitted his own socks. And one evening, Harry asked me to hold out a hank of wool. And he held out, I had to hold my hands out whilst he put this great big hank of wool over them. And he was winding the wool into a ball. So I was watching him wind the wool into the ball, and I realized that whilst he was winding up this three-dimensional spiral, it was a vortex. And when he was doing his knitting and unwinding it, it was a vortex. So I saw this opposite direction of spin causing the expansion or the contraction of the vortex. But more important, I had this epiphany, this breakthrough moment where I saw that the wool was winding on constantly changing axes. And I thought to myself, if energy is spinning, it must be free to spin on infinite number of axes, not just on one axis. And it could only form something like a ball of wool, a perfect little sphere. And the point is that the axis of spin is there, but because it's changing its position all the time, it can't be measured. And in physics, if something can't be measured, it doesn't exist. It's simple as that. I realized I had a major breakthrough here because the three-dimensional extension of energy in this spherical vortex explains away the properties of material particles. You see, the extension in 3 dimensions of the spherical vortex explains the extension of matter in 3 dimensions. Then the spin of the vortex as I hold up this little spinner, the spin of the vortex, the spin of the spinner on a single plane enables it to balance on my fingertip. And so it is with the gyroscope. The spinning gyroscope on a ship stops the ship going out of the plane. Or if you skip a pebble across a pond, the pebble skips because it doesn't tilt and disappear into the water. So spin creates this stay put inertia. And if you've got the spin on every axis, on every plane, then it will resist movement of the vortex in any direction. So this is the stay put inertia of mass explained. And then the forces associated with matter, gravity, magnetism, and electric charge. The polarity of the charge is due to the positive or negative, is due to the spin onto the ball or off the ball. And then you've got the extension of the vortex into infinity. What we see as a particle of matter, or what we perceive as a particle of matter, is just the dense center of the vortex, but the vortex energy extends into infinity. And it's that infinite extension of vortex energy that explains the infinite extension of magnetism, of gravity, of electric charge. And because the vortices are intrinsically dynamic, they interact when they overlap. We don't have to assume that there's something else associated with the particle that's responsible for the force fields, for the forces. It's just all one theory, this one vortex theory. It's a unified field theory. It explains everything without any other assumptions. The thing about theory is you've got to explain the most things with the minimum assumptions. And I can explain the whole of physics just with one assumption, that energy exists either in waves to form light and heat and radiation, or spins in this spherical vortex like the ball of wool, to form subatomic particles of matter. It's so simple. Anyone can understand it. But there's another big lesson here that I learned. And that is, when I got to a point where I couldn't break through, instead of trying to force it, instead of getting exasperated, I just let go. In Belfast, when I couldn't make any progress with the vortex because of the problem of the axis of spin, I just let go. I went off mountaineering. I enjoyed the music festival that was going on in Belfast at the time. And when I got back to England, I just surfed with my brothers and played the guitar in the evenings. I completely let go. And then when Harry asked me to hold the hank of wool, I had the breakthrough, which put me on track for the rest of my life. So if you get any problems, instead of getting depressed or exasperated or fighting for them, just let go, just breathe and let the solution come. Because if you're meant to break through, you will be given the breakthrough by the universe. It just comes to you in some way that you will not be expecting. So on that note, I'm going to leave you, and I'm going to sing you this song that I wrote in the Mourns Mountains when I'd let go of the vortex theory, and it's called Rover. Rove, 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 rover. A rover is my heart, searching for a boundless sea, some thousand leagues afar. Although it search, it never finds. Seek hard though it may, for that sea's far, far away. Though we're young and careless, we're neither bound nor free, for deep down we're all searching for that we never see. Although we're led, there's none that lead. If we ask, we're told to look out for a flower never of seed. Some may search for money, some for another's arms. Some may search for nothing, they die before they were born. But money's lost whenever it's found, and another's arms are frail. The rock we reach for turns out to be nothing but shell. Our fathers, they were hungry, they lived from day to day. But now we are fed, we hunger for their faith that never sway. You see, a hungry man has his dreams, his hopes for a better day. But a man with wealth has nothing for which to pray. Rove, 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 rover. A rover is my heart, searching for a boundless sea, some thousand leagues afar. Although it search, it never finds. Seek hard though it may, for that sea's far, far away, far, far away. So, thanks for listening, and thanks for staying the course, and I hope I see you again next week.